Hello everyone. So I am just starting on my Darkwater Sweater. Ooh, I'm probably... Does anyone else have it with the long tail cast on that they are terrible at estimating how much yarn they need? Where is this? Stuck. There we go. Because I've heard the whole wrap the yarn around the needle and then that helps you, but then it's always too long. And then I've done the where you cast on using both the tail and the inside, but then that relies on you being able to find the inside of your ball of yarn. I don't think I can, so I always end up casting on twice. But what I've been doing, I've unraveled my yarn, like unwound it a bit, and it's just really bloody long now. But what I have also done recently, as a kind of better estimation of than just wrapping around, is taking a bit of a tail, and then just like casting on 10 stitches. 3, 4, 6. I don't want to lose count. 7, 8, 9. That's 10 in total. 4, 6. No. That's 10 I've cast on. Awesome. And then just taking the tail end and just kind of, either you can make like a slip knot. I'm too lazy for that. And then unraveling it, and then I know this is 10 stitches. And then take that and go, that will be 20. That will be 40. I'm going to leave a bit of a tail. So then that would be about 80. And that would be about 120. Yes, and I need 106 for what I'm doing. So I'll take 120 and then go back a bit. And that's kind of been the best one I've ever found, other than using inside and outside. So let me just quickly explain before, because I'm going to be counting, so I'll show this, but I'll probably fast forward it. So I thought, since Jen Steingass, so Knit Love Wool, is doing a knit along from the 31st of January, which is today, it's Sunday, until I think April, end of April, mid-April, something like that. I'll have all the details below. And I've been meaning to knit a Darkwater sweater by her. I've had the yarn for ages. I talked about this in my most recent video. I thought it would be nice to kind of, film something a bit different, where I wanted to film myself knitting this anyway, because it will be my first colourwork sweater. If you've watched my most recent video, you would have seen I've done a lot more colourwork now, and there's more I still want to share about what I've been working on. But I thought it would be nice to film it, especially now that the knit along is running. I was thinking about knitting a cowl, and then I was like, no, do the sweater. The cake is yarned up. The yarn is caked up. And finally just film it. I'm filming on my laptop again, like my last video, because it's just so much easier, and saves me a lot of time. So we'll see how it goes. And once I've cast on and can start working, I'll come back and actually talk to you properly, because right now I can't count and talk. I will lose count. So I'll come back to you once I've got my stitches. So I think, where's my phone? I think I've got all my stitches now. That took me like 4 minutes. It's really weird sort of being able to see. I do have all my stitches. Now let's see. I'm worried that my cable's actually too long. Oh yeah, definitely. What was I thinking? Oh, I don't have a much shorter one though. I don't want to transfer it though. And my tail is still way too long. Which makes me wonder if I actually cast on enough. I'm sure I did. But I think I might have to use my other needles, not my Knit Pro ones. Because I think I've got 3.75. And I quite like these needles as well, so. And they're new. 22 inches. Would that be too long? I might go for my medium-sized cable. That's my short and my short. Let's have a look. Yep, definitely the shorter one. So these are my... how do you pronounce it? Chiaogoo? I'll show you in a sec. My mum got me a voucher from Tangled Yarn for Christmas. And she had bought some of these a while ago. And I think they arrived when I was in Dubai. So, there you can... Though if it's back to front for you, I don't know if it will be. I have... brain fried. Can't... Either way. I'll try and link them down below where I got them from. I got the wooden ones. The the spin ones. Because the normal, like, metal ones weren't in stock. And so I used the voucher to pay for most of this. The rest I had to pay because they're expensive. But really, really nice. If you can afford them, I would highly recommend them. It's just one of those things, isn't it? Like, with hand-dyed yarn, if you can afford it, I would highly recommend buying it. But if you can't, it's fine if you can't. And, you know, maybe in the future you'll be gifted some, or maybe same thing with the needles, maybe someone, you know, in your life can gift them to you if you're lucky, or otherwise maybe with vouchers and things you can get them in the future. But it's just one of those things, isn't it, where by buying something else or spending more money just makes your life a bit easier, which is I find often quite frustrating, because if you're already struggling financially, you often also struggle for time, and you could really use the time savers. But anyway, that's a whole nother discussion I didn't really plan to get into right now. So I just need to recount these, because I think I did count it right, but if I'm transferring them anyway, I might as well count them. Okay, I did cast on the right number. I might as well have just, like, cast that on again, because I pretty much took just as long. And normally what I then try to do, especially if I'm worried I don't have enough yarn for the project, I kind of measure, like, my tail and then try and recast on again. I'm too tired, I cannot be bothered. Not today. But yeah, so I've got the wooden ones, and I quite like wooden needles. I know some people really don't, because they can typically break more easily. I need to get a stitch marker. Some people also, like, obviously different materials for the needles will change how, like, depending on the yarn you then use, it will cause, like, different, like, how the stitches slip off. But I quite like that with wooden ones. Where is my beginning? There. With wooden ones, it's a bit more grippy, because as much as I do like stitches kind of like slipping, like off the needles and everything, sometimes, depending on the yarn, it's then so slippy that I've had stitches just kind of like fall off, and that I do not like. Let's make sure my stitch is untwisted. I've had this once. Was I doing socks? A cowl? I can't even remember. Once I've had it that my stitches were twisted, because I was like, who even does that? Whenever they say it, you know, like in videos, tutorials and patterns. And I was like, who twists their stitches? And then I did. And then I was like, okay. Oops, not yet. I get it now. I understand it is a thing that can happen to anyone. And I think the more you cast on, the likelier it is. And with a lighter weight, thinner yarn as well, I think. Because with chunky stuff, it like really stays in position. I'm just gonna get my row counter just to make it easier. But yes, I thought it'd be nice. I'm not gonna record every time I like sit down and work on this, because I think that would be like, I'm gonna have multiple videos anyway, but I think that would be especially just a bit overkill. I always find the first stitch is so hard, especially because I could have probably dropped one cable size even. I hate joining in the round. Love working in the round. Hate joining in the round. But I was really glad when I saw that the sweater itself is knit in 3.75 instead of 3.5. Because, well, my 3.5s are in use with my scrappy blanket, with some socks I'm making as well, which I'm knitting 2 at a time, which is quite new for me. I've never done that before. And like I mentioned in my most recent video, I've just been so into sock knitting recently. When was the first time I knitted my own pair of socks? I think it was the end of 2019. Oh my god, I'd love it if you could hear my neighbour right now. I can't remember if I've talked about him. I think I have. I've got 2. One behind me here. I'm in the living room right now. Well, you can just experience this with me if you can hear him. Anyway, but I knitted my first pair of socks end of 2019. And then as soon as I'd kind of, I think I hadn't even finished my first one and I already had started 2 others. It took me a while to get them all finished. But then kind of stopped again. Never fully fell in love with it like with other knitting. And then I think it was like November this year. Well, last year. It's 2021. I have to keep reminding myself. Where I think a combination of knitting some samples for Helena from Permade Yarns, and then also Georgie from the Fibre Fox last year, so 2020, started a like mystery sock club. I think it was like over summer or something she decided to stop it. She just had like too much going on and everything. And she started it up again this year. I've already got the January colour. I might have already shared it on Instagram. If not, it will be up soon. I've taken the pictures. And I finally, in like September, October, knitted with her January colour from 2020. Which was a bit embarrassing, but I kind of wanted to see what a few of her colours looked like, because I was like, maybe I won't make a pair of socks with them, like maybe I'll like combine some of them, but the January colour was just so beautiful. I think I've shared a picture of it on my Instagram. Pretty much just check my Instagram for most things. I'm much better at showing off things on there because it's easier to take a picture than it is to like record a whole video. This is so tight right now. It's quite uncomfortable to knit with, but I know once the first round is done, it will be a bit looser. Just my cast on was obviously a little bit too tight, even though I tried to do it quite loose. Yeah, so with the like sample knitting, and then I think I also bought some like DK yarn to then make socks with, because they're a bit warmer and cozier for when you're like watching TV in winter or something, or for bed. And then I just kept going, and then my mum had ordered the 52 weeks of socks book, which she got sent here, which I then brought to her over Christmas. And I was gonna, like, I had a look through, and there were some really beautiful patterns in there. And then I eventually was like, okay, I need this book too. And so now there's like 52 sock patterns in there I really want to make. The Everyday Hermione socks I've already shared in my most recent video. Like, loved making those. And I think there's something really satisfying, especially with everything that's been going on with the pandemic. It's been nice to have some smaller projects on the go, because as much as I love finished shawls, I find it so just unmotivating, whatever, not motivating, working on a shawl, because they take such a long time, and it's so hard to see any sort of progress, even though the end product is actually beautiful. And with a sweater, I'm kind of okay, because you can still kind of see progress, and I don't know, they just don't seem to take as long. And I think it's also, they often, aren't as complicated, because if you're doing like a really beautiful shawl with all this detail, like lace or whatever, it's just a lot of work. And I often, I have this with sweaters too, I make them longer sleeves as well, because I've got long arms, a long body, because I'm relatively tall. And so it's just, everything just takes a bit longer. But with a shawl as well, I typically make them bigger than they're meant to, because I find a lot of people don't design shawls big enough, in my opinion. And yeah, with socks, when you're just feeling a bit down with your knitting, it can be quite easy, and they won't take you too long. I've done a pair of DK socks in a day, more like half a day really, considering when I started and finished, but like, I could comfortably do one in a day if I started in the morning. And 4-ply, like fingering weight socks, typically, I think I can do them in like 2-3 days. Like, I could probably do a pair in a weekend. It would just be quite exhausting because I couldn't do much else, but a week is super comfortable for me, depending on how like long and complex they are. But like vanilla socks that aren't too long, 2 days, quite easy. But kind of speaking about these needles and knitting sweaters and things, I recently finished my Cozy Classic Raglan, posted about it on Instagram, and said the most awful thing imaginable, that I actually quite enjoyed knitting the sleeves. And a lot of people were like, what are you talking about? Sleeves are awful. You've always said sleeves are awful. And I normally have hated them, because they're boring. You maybe occasionally, do some decreases. Some sleeves have no decreases. You're just knitting in the round or whatever pattern you're doing for ages, and it's just a bit ugh. And the constant rotating. So then I decided, okay, this came out of more necessity than anything else. I was making a jumper for someone else, also Cozy Classic Raglan, before I even made mine. She's the reason I actually made my own, because I loved hers so much that I made for her. It's just a friend of mine. And I was worried I wouldn't have enough yarn. So I wanted to figure that out as quickly as possible, but then I kind of went, okay, well, hang on. What if I, instead of just finishing the body and then, doing the sleeves and being like, crap, I've run out with the second sleeve. Why don't I knit the sleeves first to the length that I want, and then the body can kind of, I can see what length I can get out, and then if need be, I can always order more yarn. But I'll at least be able to get a feel much better with the body of how much more I can knit, because you know, you can put a progress like keeper marker in and weigh your yarn and see how much yarn do you need to do an inch, and then weigh it again, and then get a rough idea of, pardon me, and get a rough idea of how long you can make the sweater. And then it kind of just made me realize how much easier it was doing the sleeves before I finished the body. So that already made it more enjoyable. But what really changed things for me were these needles. The fact that they're designed, like this is the medium cable, which is relatively short. What size was it, did I say? So I'm using the 14-inch, 35cm one. Knit Pro does do some shorter ones. What's the shortest one I have though? I think that's 20 inches. Is it 20 inches? But the like needles are longer, and I just find it really uncomfortable, and the cable's not long enough for me to be able to knit properly. Because like I do hold my needles almost as if they're like perfectly straight and parallel. As in like parallels to the ground. And so with the 20, I can't, there's like no space because the cable's so short. So when my mum showed me these, I was like, I think I'm going to need these. And they, you know, the needles are shorter, they're designed to work with these shorter cables. And then they've got even shorter ones called shorties, where the cables, I think, with the needles, the whole setup can be like 9 inches, which you can use for socks and mittens and stuff. And it meant I could do the sleeve in the round. I used to always do them on DPNs, because I never had a short enough cable. And I like knitting with DPNs, but I think I kind of found on sleeves, especially if you're doing a jumper, like anything, like even 4mm DPNs, I find they get quite heavy. And it just makes the whole knitting experience not as fun. Whereas with a sock, I don't know, for some reason, I just find it a bit easier with a sock. And so knitting in the round has just meant knitting a sleeve is so much easier. Like I said, I have done magic loop for sleeves in the past and do prefer that to DPNs. But knitting in the round is so much quicker for me. So these have just changed my life when it comes to sleeve knitting. And I really do enjoy them now, because now it actually feels like the body of a sweater does. Where like, okay, yeah, it's not the most enjoyable thing, but now at least I don't despise it. But I love these needles. Can you already see I finished my first round now, and it's already going much quicker. I'm not like the world's fastest knitter, I'm not even like that fast. But that first round was very slow for me. So today's Sunday. I started a new sweater on Friday because I had this yarn from Wild Atlantic. I shared it in my recent video, and I was like, oh, I want a special project, found it, perfect, let's cast it on because I want another sweater in the works. And I shouldn't have done that because I knew this knit along was happening. So I should have been patient and waited to cast this on, and you know, now not have 2 whole new cast-ons for sweaters. But we all know I'm not the best. I'm like the most well-behaved when it comes to new cast-ons. But anyway, I'm gonna keep knitting on this. Check in probably once I finish this ribbing section. But yeah, I'll do some knitting and I'll check back in later. I'm back. I still have another round of this ribbing to go for the neckband. I really like it when, or at least I'm hoping from what I've read of the pattern, that because I'm doing this now I don't have to go back and do a neckline later. I hate picking up stitches. I've gotten better at it, but I still don't really enjoy it. But I've got increases coming up soon. and I know I'm going to struggle to kind of talk through that because I'll have to count and I'll lose track. So there's a few things I just kind of thought I'd chat about now. First of all, knitting podcasts. I think I mentioned during my first episode, like, why are they called podcasts? I still have not received an answer. But whatever. Like, if that's what everyone's calling it, we'll call it that. And I've been getting really into them. My mum watches quite a few, so she kind of got me into them. And so when I was in Dubai over Christmas, we kind of, established this routine when we were knitting together and would watch some videos together. So she introduced me to quite a few people. The ones I've been really loving recently are Fibre Tales and Knitting Traditions. So Fibre Tales, I currently can't remember their names, but the Fibre Tales podcast, she's in Denmark, I believe, and Knitting Tradition, she's in Norway. And so they both just, they knit with the most amazing yarn. Fibre Tales just recently released a new shawl pattern, which is beautiful. Involves steeking, but I'm gonna brave it. It's gonna be my first steeking project, I think. But they both use quite a lot of more rustic yarn, and I think they both don't really use superwash merino and typically don't use merino. I think they have... I have made a mistake. I think Knitting Traditions in her most recent video had said that she had she's trying to really focus on knitting with a stash and using up scraps, which has kind of inspired me to do the same. And it feels really good to finish up scraps, to really just see the rest of your yarn just disappear. And like I've mentioned before, whenever I get down to the last bit or any ends that I cut off after weaving them in, I've got a little, I can actually show it. So this just sits next to my sofa. It's just one of the Wool and the Gang kits that I've bought. Finished, haven't sewed together. I need another one of those days where I just sew together. And it's literally just filled with scraps. So some of it, this was from a provisional cast on. I try to reuse them, but it's just such a pain. And there's a big thing. This one here of the Gryffindor Show Your House Pride or whatever socks that I made, and was this meant to be in here? Am I confusing different bags now? Because I was also using a plastic bag to collect things. I don't even remember anymore. I'm going to put this to the side, because I think that was from a pair of socks. But yeah, so that was from those House Pride socks, where I showed in my latest video the major issues I had with it. That was a superwash merino from Cascade Yarns, and the yarn feels really lovely and everything, and was quite nice to knit with because I've made a jumper with some of it as well. That was the Cozy Classic raglan for the friend of mine I talked about before. But for colour work, I just wasn't a fan of it. So the yarn I'm using for this Darkwater Sweater, I'll give you a bit of more close up. So it's a very, very dark blue with some lighter bits. So it's hand dyed, it's by Noodle Soup. And then the other one, my contrast colour, is this one here. They've been caked up for so long, they're getting a bit unwound and scrappy. So this one I think is called Chainmail and has some darker splotches, but it's kind of this grey colour. And my main colour I think is called Charcoal. So I'm excited and also nervous to see how the colour work goes for the sweater in the yoke, because this is superwash merino, and I'm hoping, I really have my fingers crossed, that the reason I struggled with those socks I made is because of that brand of yarn, and maybe that it's commercial yarn, and I'm really hoping that with this hand-dyed stuff that I don't run into issues, because getting through a whole yoke if I can't, get it to work and behave properly, it's just going to be a nightmare. So I think that's part of the reason I've kind of been putting this off, and I do think this is the right time. Like, with Jennifer Steingass holding a knit along, it just makes sense. But yeah, so with like those podcasts I've been watching on YouTube, I really am starting to fall in love with more rustic yarns. The like wristies I made using the kit from Lucy Locketland. That was Shetland wool, like I mentioned. Sorry, I just need to change needles right now. Because I didn't mention that before. I was actually meant to cast on in 3.5. I didn't. So I cast on in 3.75, work one round in 3.75, and then went, wait, I was meant to use 3.5. So then I switched. It will block. And now I need to switch back to 3.75. So I can start actually working the main part of the sweater. But yeah, so that was for the mittens, well, not mittens, wrist warmers, it was 100% Shetland. And at first I was like, oh, it feels a bit scratchy, but that's okay, it's just on my wrist, so it will keep me warm. But as I was working it got softer and softer, and I also just realised I just got used to it. And you really do kind of build up this tolerance. Yeah, so I've kind of been trying to lean more on at least not going for superwash yarn, which is quite hard because, the standard with a lot of hand dyes, and that's what I'd like professionally. That's what I kind of prefer. That's what I was trying to say, preferentially like to buy from indie dyers. But like I said, the Jameson and Smith yarn that Lucy Locketland stocks, I think is, it's considered commercial, and I quite like that. And I wouldn't mind knitting more with that. And it's a British breed, which is also something I'm trying to support more, hence kind of trying to move away from the merino and go for, blue-faced Leicester. I think Corriedale is another British one. I know Wensleydale, I think, is as well. And what was the one I was just saying? Shetland, that's the other one. And they also just knit in very kind of neutral colours, whereas I have traditionally kind of worked with much more brighter colours, and it's just been quite nice to see the things they make, and it's kind of inspired me to try and go a bit more neutral, and also just to try yarn from other people and just, expand my horizons, go out of my comfort zone. And that's been just really nice, knitting away in the evenings, watching a podcast. I just wish, I know with recording my own episodes how much work goes into them, especially if you do have to do a proper edit of cutting in extra clips, which I've sometimes done. I mainly have always had to do that because the lens I have on the camera that I always use, it can't autofocus. I think it's meant to be able to, but it kind of doesn't work when I try to film. So there's a lot of, I can't just hold something up with my laptop and be look at this. I have to kind of shoot that extra and then edit that in, which is a bit of a pain because it's a lot more work. But yeah, so I know how much work can, go into one of those episodes, and, you also with knitting videos, unless you do tutorials or what I'm doing now where I'm just sitting here knitting and talking, it's really hard to do more than a video a week or a video every fortnight. And I know a lot of people do kind of focus on a video every fortnight, and then they might do extra videos of other things. And I have ideas for other videos. It's hard to kind of fit it all in, but I just wish, like, I enjoy watching these podcasts so much that I just want a new video every day from everyone that I like. And I know that's never going to happen. I think it's also that some knitters are starting to do Vlogmas, and, you know, we'll just record short videos, 5 or 10 minutes, but it was still nice to just have something to look forward to every day. And then I find January is always such a hard month because people stop, they take a break, you know, well deserved after all that. And then all of a sudden they just stop and they're gone, and you're like, wait, you've now cut me off? And then, you know, life goes on, you get busy, you find new people, and then when they start posting again, you're like, oh yeah, I forgot. I love your videos. And you get really excited again. So I do agree, like, having a bit of a break is important for the person making the videos, but it's also good for the viewer. Though the big break that I took, I maybe wouldn't recommend. But like I discussed in my other video, there were reasons for it. I just needed to focus on other things. And that's the problem when, you know, this isn't your job, because it's a bit easier. Well, you have to make time for it, don't you? Whereas currently, it is much more of a sacrifice that's something else. Just tidying up as I go, because otherwise I have a huge cleanup ahead of me again. Yeah, and otherwise you just... I forgot what I was saying. But I do want to try and make more time, but it very much is about making time. And sacrificing something else. That's what I was trying to say. I will now show you. So I've finished the ribbing. I'm a bit worried. Is it too see-through? Is it too open? Might be okay with the rest of the jumper. And now I have to do some increases. But I'm quite loving this already. I'm nervous about getting to the colour work, but I have a lot of increases to do before I get there anyway. So I'm just going to keep working on this, and I think I already said I'm going to do a couple of parts to this kind of section, because I don't just want to make one video. I think it will be way too long. I talk a lot. So I'll do a couple of videos and just kind of, you know, check in every now and then have like what I've just done twice so far here, of just sitting down, knitting a bit. It will be so much easier once I'm at the body, like the main body, and I've cast off, separated for sleeves, because then, you know, I'm just knitting and don't have to pay attention at all. I don't think it has any waist shaping or anything. I typically don't do it, I don't find it necessary. But yeah, ooh. I'm going to have a cup of tea. I'm quite sleepy. Didn't sleep well last night. And do a bit more knitting. I've been watching Grace and Frankie. I only got into it like a week ago. And now I can't stop watching it, and I'm so glad there's 6 seasons. It means I've got a lot to look forward to. But if you haven't watched it, it's on Netflix. It's a Netflix series, so it should be on everyone's Netflix if you're subscribed to that. Check it out. And also, you know, check out those podcasts I was mentioning. There's a couple of other ones I like. But those are currently the 2 that I'm really, really into. Cool. I'm going to go make a cup of tea now.